It has to be very tailored, and that's where I accept some of the critiques of a caucus. But ultimately, if we get the language right, we have the right people, we have a proportionate amount of people representing these areas to help make sure that we get good representation. Because again, back to what I'm saying, if we're talking, I don't like democracy, the term democracy that much. I like the republic, but ultimately we have representatives that go to the republic and vote. If we don't get the right people, we're going to get punished for it. And that's where the caucus is a great thing and the scary thing. It can help accelerate the learning curve of the electorate to have to learn what me and Sergio and others know. And it's stuff that, we get paid money to do, but other people will learn it. And at a minimum, they'll figure out why things are the way they are, and hopefully they'll figure out how to correct it by making sure that they're making the right selections. And it's not always our favorite, but it's someone that can take the fight to Washington or wherever, to the state legislature.
Why are you not leading this Arizona caucus movement?
I think the biggest thing is some of the appetite. We just need to go out there and see what people think. It's never been talked about before. So we want to go out there and see what people think, see, what the pros and cons are. I mean, I'm one person. The chair is one person. The party is an entity. Let's go out and see what our people think, where they're at.
Yeah.
And from that, gauge where we can go. But again, like I said on the call, there's very strong positives and some strong negatives as well. And, none of those are lost on me.
A negative
Well,
from
if we do the caucus, we definitely have to have these cheat sheets.
Yeah, if you elect a jerk, or if you elect a rhino or whatever, and I'm not in the game of rhinos and stuff, usually. I'm just not. My job is to put R's on the board. That's my job. How I feel does not matter. What my job, like changing the oil in your car in certain ways, is to make sure it's done right. I need to put R's on the board. But at the end of the day, it's very important as a movement that I think that we have the core membership at least having a much stronger say than we do. Because right now we go to our statutory and mandatory meetings, we censure people who are in power, right, that we don't necessarily care for, and that's all we can do. How about we do something else?
Yep.
How about we educate ourselves on the political realities? How about we educate the electorate by giving a standard of approval of the party instead of us pulling ourselves apart all the time? And I'm not saying we shouldn't critique our electeds, but let's have more of a say in who ends up being elected, so that the people who vote can have more confidence and they don't all pivot independent. Sergio, can you back me up on this at all?
No, I agree with you. I don't know what Sergio thinks, but I agree with what you're saying.
Agree with the principle, but what do you do with Paul Boyer, or Michelle Ugenti that just killed a bill, or Doug Ducey that vetoed some good election integrity bills?
When it comes to them wanting to be reelected, that's when you don't put an R behind their name.
Or what if they just got elected?
Well, that's
like Stephen Ritter, or whatever his name is.
You just have to. I mean, unfortunately, what would we have done different to figure out who they were?
Oh, I never liked Ducey from the very first primary. I could tell he was a grifter.
Well, ultimately, this is part of the whole process, is if we get somebody that we're not happy with, we, as the body of the Republican Party, are accountable. That's what it comes down to. So if we get it wrong, we get it wrong. And we pay the price. And we have that immediate feedback from the grassroots, and we say, hey, don't do that again. Or people will be elected in our place to go and make the right decision, whatever that is. But it's...
You're not going to be 100% right every time.
No, you won't.
And some of them are very, very good at hiding and disguising who they really are. And so, you do the best you can, but, how can we fault anyone for them turning out to be who they were? But, we just need to narrow it down so that we're not trying to find information on 18 candidates versus 2 or 3.
Well, the ultimate difference, and again, this might sound cynical and cold, but it's true. I've done 8 cycles now, and I've never lost getting people elected. If I lose, it doesn't take anything away. I'm just lucky. But I've done this many cycles now for very conservative Republicans. I can tell you that people who have the money have the easiest time of telling the story. So if we don't, they can go out there for all these people who don't pay attention but once every 4 years and get elected with their commercials, with whatever. The grassroots, this is where the caucus comes in. And this is, again, it's not without, being rife with consequences if we have the wrong people involved. But this is part of the motivation to get people involved with the party, because the party ultimately, again, people have to run under a certain banner. Republican, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian, they have to run under something. If they're running under us, there's over 1 million people who probably feel much like we do, who are saying, hey, he's a Republican, so he's a Republican, so I can vote for him. And they'll vote for him based on the millions of dollars spent. If we, as the grassroots, who put in our time, our efforts, and our talents, and our opinions, can mitigate that by a lot, probably hundreds of times, just us showing up, they'll have to spend so much more on commercials just to be viable if we're not behind them. And that's what's kind of cool about the idea.
Yeah, because these people, once they're in office and they start building these big coffers, like McCain and Lindsey Graham and McConnell and all those types. And then that's hard to defeat.
Well, and here's what drives me wild, and this is a very real part of being an operative. Ultimately, if my job is to get people to win, and I have my principles, I want people to be conservative and all of that, but we have to win to beat the next worst thing in the worst case. Money wins every time. You don't have to have all of it. I've said this seriously. I've said this to the last 3 or 4 congressional candidates I've had. You don't have to have all the money. You don't have to have most of the money, but you need to show up with about half. That plus heart plus principles wins elections, and we've done that. But again, like I said last cycle, 8-1, it can be very hard to overcome that.
Yeah.
And so if we, at the grassroots level, some of the elements I'm talking about, like I said, you don't have to have the most money, but the reason for that is because you have people on the ground that are for you, that are talking about you, that are getting their friends and family to vote for you. That's how this works. And that's ultimately, I think, how we can, save or defend Arizona, is keeping some of that strategy. We'll never have all the money because right now the money follows corruption. We'll never have money. We never will. At least not in my lifetime, or not my political, career lifetime. We just won't.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, guys, I know, Greg, thank you so much for your extra time. Hopefully we've shared things with you that are helpful or in agreement, at least with what you're thinking. My phone is about to die. So,
and I'm about had it for the day.
Yeah.
But I'm